Hey guys, we're back. Lance Martin, Coldwell Banker Town and Country. Our 2022 real estate market forecast continues, and I am super excited. We have Iddo Benzeevi himself back. It's been 4 years, Iddo, since you last came and spoke to our group, which is hard to believe. I mean, goodness gracious. So before we start chatting, let's do a little introduction. I'll do the basic introduction, and I'll let kind of Iddo fill in the rest of the resume that I'm missing. So most of you that have seen Iddo speak previously at one of our forecasts, your major connection with Iddo is the World Logistics Center at the east end of Moreno Valley, which looks like it's growing a little bit. We can talk about what Skechers is doing. But basically, Iddo is a large-scale developer. I understand Citizen of the Year of Moreno Valley in 2019. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes.
And probably a whole bunch of other things. I know you have projects. You have projects all over the world, don't you?
Well, our group does, yes.
Or your group? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what did I leave out that's important on the introduction?
I think it's perfect.
I think we got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, like I say, it's been 4 years. It was May of 2018 when you were kind enough to come out to at the DoubleTree when we were doing our forecast. We're in studio again, guys. You know, we're still kind of, figuring COVID out, and our intention was to do a live event. But that actually was the last live event that we have done. Because then we got caught up with COVID in 2020, early March, and then, of course, last year. And then this year, if we had pushed the forecast out to May or June, we would probably be in a ballroom somewhere. But anyway, we're back in studio. So again, I want to thank you for doing that. I was just before we started, we were talking about, I haven't noticed you as much in the news anymore, and maybe being a little bit more kind of laying low isn't a horrible thing. So what have you been doing the last few years? What's going on?
Well, I think COVID has kept a lot of people out of the news, and,
Yep.
and it's good. But we've been busy. As you know, the World Logistics Center is a big project. So it's a big project. We've been engineering and continuing to do a lot of the engineering work. We're hoping to start grading next year and go vertical in 2024.
Right.
So we used to build in the old days buildings that were 32-foot clear, even
Yep.
lower.
And now they're
up 36, 40.
up.
And so essentially, as the buildings rise, what you're really doing is you're providing the cubic feet capacity of a building, not the ground floor or the footprint. So as you're getting higher and higher, an 80-foot clear building is twice a 40-foot clear building.
Right.
So in capacity, you measure it sort of in capacity, it's a cubic feet. And I think it was 10 or 15 years ago, I said, oh, the market is going to go, we're going to start writing cubic feet rents. And actually, the new leases we're doing are based on the cubic feet.
Right. So the addition to the Skechers plant, we just talked about this before we came on camera. It's the equivalent of a 5-story tall building
Well, no,
in that? Or?
there's 5 levels inside
5
operationally. The building itself is about 50 feet.
Okay.
The lowest, first column of the 45-foot clear, getting a little technical. But essentially, you have 5 floors in there, providing different space for different functions.
Right.
But yeah, the buildings are getting
So how much
taller.
larger is that than the original Skechers plant? How tall is that one?
Actually, in footprint, it's not larger. In height, it's larger. So it's about 30% more building than the first one in terms of capacity, height, but not as large in the footprint.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so we kind of already mentioned COVID. We're like 3 minutes into the conversation. So it's been an interesting couple of years. I think if I heard you right, you've actually been busier in the last couple of years. That certainly is true of everybody in my world. So I'd like to maybe take a minute, get your thoughts on the last couple of years, but I'll set it up with a 30-second introduction of what we went through. Kind of, I guess, got surprised. I don't know that I was paying much attention in January or February of 2020, and to the degree that I certainly wasn't anticipating what we've been through in the last couple of years. So then we get to March 15th, which is so such a jolt in the face, because we were doing our forecast. We had a live forecast scheduled. I'm not sure if we had you scheduled for that one. I don't think that we did. But we are scheduled for March, I think, 17th of 2020, and then we did the lockdown, I think, on March 14th or 12th or whatever it was. So we had a panic attack for a little bit, but then almost immediately, I mean, I would think, and I mean almost immediately, I mean like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, certainly by the middle of April of 2020, on the real estate side, I was amazed at how, I'm like, wow, people want to buy houses. People want to see it. And we were still kind of sort of in a lockdown, deal, or at least, certainly early on. And ultimately, most real estate companies, residential side, and which I'm not in your world, so this is why I love to have you here, because I don't know how much of it translated to your world, although I think I have an idea. But most residential real estate companies had record-breaking years in 2020, and who would have thought? I mean, seriously, 20% appreciation across the board, generally speaking, in residential real estate. So it was like, wow, okay, well that was unexpected, and then we get to 2021. And we're still kind of thinking, oh, well, we haven't shaken COVID off yet. And we have another record-breaking year, basically. We pretty much do it again in 2021. Right now, it just seemed like, well, of course, that's just what happened. But, no one was projecting. Nobody was projecting what we saw in residential real estate for those last 2 years. So what was going on with your company? What was going on the logistics side and your business? So tell us.
Well, we've been expanding, a lot of acquisitions, bought a lot of property that we're going to development. But essentially what COVID did, people think COVID caused a lot of things. What COVID did is actually accelerate a lot of things in the market. It actually didn't cause them. The trends were already there. So you see a trend even in logistics, because that's the market or the project we're talking about, at least the World Logistics Center. And we have also residential master plan communities that are going to come into production now, several thousand units in the market. So that's coming.
Oh, he's got my attention.
Yeah,
okay, we're going to get to that
one. We'll get there.
Yes,
but essentially, what happened, what the trend was going, we went from an analog world analog retail to digital. What does that mean? If you look at the oversimplified, the typical model was, let's take a supermarket, right? You put the warehouse in the neighborhood closer to your customers. You make the customer come to the warehouse, the supermarket, go around with the cart, pick the products, right? Do the sorting, process payment, go to the cashier, then load it.
Go into the
supermarket.
supermarket.
Do the delivery himself, load it to the trunk of your car, and then deliver it yourself to your home. So that's analog, right, retail and distribution. And the infrastructure required to support it was your typical brick and mortar retail store, right? You go to the store, pick up your goods, deliver it to your own home, right? You take it home. In the digital world, it's reversed. You order it online. Somebody, let's say at Amazon, is going through the aisles at the Amazon warehouse, picking up the products, putting them in the cart, processing the payment, and then delivering it to you. So retail is coming to you as compared to you having to go to retail. So when you do that, when you change that infrastructure, the infrastructure moves from brick and mortar retail stores to a logistics center.
Which is
fulfillment center.
And that's your wheelhouse.
So that's what's driving this gigantic demand. I mean, over the next 5 years, projected in the U.S., we need 800 million square feet of additional distribution.
Now, do you think if we had not experienced COVID in the last 2 years and everything that came with it, and you said it, I guess, it accelerated it. So how much did it shorten the time to get to what appears to be like we are full blown? I mean, whether it's Amazon or interesting story. 4 years ago, I watched our interview this morning. I asked, we had, I don't know, a couple hundred people in the audience, and I said, how many people have ordered their groceries online as opposed to going to the store? 2 people. This was 4 years ago. 2 people. And frankly, in fairness, a few months before that, I had never heard of Instacart. Now, I don't know what the number is, but goodness gracious. I mean, now, again, and I think COVID has done this, it's not just, I mean, geez, forget about ordering groceries. Now, it used to just be Domino's was amazing. Now you can pretty much order anything you want, have it show up at your house within, an hour or so. So my question, the COVID effect, I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but it basically accelerated what was already in place.
So the big trends, the global trends were already going on. And COVID accelerated because people were sitting at home. And basically the only way to get things was to get involved with e-commerce, all of your stuff. But the big trends, the digital world is coming, has been coming. And so, we're going from analog retail to digital retail, which converted the infrastructure you need from brick and mortar retail stores, and we talked about it about a few years back, into the digital world, which requires these fulfillment logistics centers to go on. But there's other trends. We have big trends in the world where just the overall production capacity in the world, and people's ability to purchase things has increased tremendously. So I'll give you an example. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the only place you can sell an iPhone is maybe the United States, North America, right? Europe, Japan, some. Nobody could afford a $1,000 iPhone in China, right? Or in Cambodia, or in Vietnam, or India, right? A lot of words, Eastern Europe.
Right.
But the world, as we have progressed, right, and became more free to some extent, although we now have issues that it's kind of reverting back a little bit, but essentially, you had more and more people moving to the middle class globally, all with purchasing power, right, that they didn't have a few years back. You look at India and China, I mean, there's between the two of them about 3 billion people that 20, 30 years ago could hardly buy anything, and now could buy most middle-class products in those markets. So the capacity, the just general capacity for more goods, more movements of goods, buying, ability to buy from production all over the world is increased. And all of that is supported. The underlying infrastructure that supports all that is logistics.
Yeah.
And that's why you see this tremendous growth with this type of, I mean, it became the trophy property. It used to be Class A office buildings in major downtowns was the prize, right?
Right. Boy.
Now it's logistics building.
Right. Yeah. And I guess we'll stumble into that. I mean, there's like 7 different topics that you just, kind of wanted me to jump on. But let's just deal with the last one, Class A office space. I mean, I just look at our buildings that we have. A traditional real estate office not that long ago was 6, 8, 10,000 square feet. A couple offices, a bullpen, agents would come and go. Man, I got to tell you, that's not the model today. We've taken 3 of our 4 offices from 6,000 square feet down to less than 2,000 square feet. They're better buildings. They're beautiful. But who needs that? Who needs that retail office space? Because people are working from home, or even in our business, we've never needed that big of space. It was just kind of a thing that we did. So it certainly changed. And if anybody doubted the need for warehouse space or logistics space, boy, the last few years have certainly proved it. A couple things. The 60 freeway between Moreno Valley and Banning Beaumont now. How much of that are your fingerprints on? Because it seems to me that every time I drive through there, I don't think this would be here today if it wasn't for what you were doing. And as a consumer and as a driver who goes through that pass, boy, it's pretty nice. So what if anything accelerated that you had to do with, or was that just happening either way?
We don't take credit for anything. We just like to support good initiative in our region on different levels, and so it's all good. I mean, we have had good leadership. We have good leadership that sees where the county needs to go, and somehow, with a lot of people's involvement, we get.
Well, I give you credit for it. I don't know if you want credit for it, but when I drive through there, and because I can recall various conversations over the years with traffic and trucks and all the rest of it. And again, going back to our 4-year-ago interview, which, by the way, if you're interested, it's on our YouTube channel. It's 28 May of 2018. And even back then, you were saying, hey, there was all this concern about trucks and traffic and smog and pollution. And you're like, hey, it doesn't happen. We're not seeing it. And again, I have an office in Moreno Valley. I live in Riverside. My mom and dad live in Banning Beaumont. I'm a desert rat. I'm going down that 60 freeway. I'm going through that pass a lot. And even while they were constructing it, quite honestly, I was pretty amazed. They did a pretty darn good job about that, keeping the traffic flowing. But I never, ever once, I don't think, got stuck behind a bunch of trucks. Ever. So it is kind of amazing the way that flow is going. And even, frankly, even on the 215 and all the corridor that we've got going there, and a lot of logistics and warehouse space up there, it just doesn't feel to me like we've built an industrial community.
We have a perception issue more than anything. Even when people talk traffic or traffic numbers, if they're not in the industry, it's kind of difficult to decipher, and the number could scare you when you talk about trips, car trips, or truck trips, and so forth. But the reality is traffic is more about pattern than it is about numbers.
Right.
So the pattern in Moreno Valley, for example, is everybody gets up in the morning, right, gets on the 60 freeway and heads west for jobs. Right. That's 90% of the population commutes out of town for work, sometimes 2 to 4 hours a day. So I'll give you an example. If you came across the street for your neighborhood and you put a major church there, a mega church that gets 50,000 people in there.
Right.
During the week, you won't feel the traffic impact because nobody goes to church at 8 o'clock in the morning, comes back there at 5.
Right.
But maybe on Sundays, on the weekends, on the evenings, you'll be busy, right? So the pattern will be, right, off peak, right? Not during your rush hours. On the other hand, even if you put a big mall and you'd say, gee, that will generate a lot of traffic, a big mall will actually not impact your morning and evening commutes because nobody goes to the mall and needs to be at the mall at 8 o'clock in the morning and gets back there at 5.
Right.
So it depends what it is and the pattern. So the pattern in Moreno Valley is get up in the morning, get on the 60 freeway, head west for job. LA, Orange County, San Diego, you're heading west.
Right.
By providing 33,000 jobs like we are in the World Logistics Center and the Eastern Town.
Maybe have some of those
people get up in the morning, 30,000 people working there, instead of getting on the freeway and heading west for jobs, they're heading east, which is actually counter traffic, it's wide open, but also they're not getting on the freeway. So actually our traffic analysis shows that because of the World Logistics Center, it actually reduced traffic on the 60 freeway because 30,000 people that would have gone on the freeway will now stay in town.
Well, anything we can do to reduce the traffic at the 6215 91 interchange, we need some help. We need to push some of those people going to the east.
What needs to happen there is it's pretty much built to capacity, but the reason it's so congested, it's about the only way you can go. But I think if we take what is sort of Redlands Boulevard and connect it through Santa Mateo to the 10, cross over the hill, you'll have another huge...
You mean, but connect it legitimately? Because I drive that all the time.
No, to connect, right?
Yeah, but we have an office in Redlands. So when I go to my Redlands office, I get off on Redlands Boulevard and I go through Santa Mateo. But again, we're kind of, you mean like a real double lane?
I'm talking about a straight line, straight. And it's about 5 miles to the 10. So now you'll have another connection that will connect you through Redlands to the 60.
So how many years from now are we going to be sitting here saying, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful connection between the 60 and the 10 going Redlands Boulevard?
That's beyond my ability to predict. But if you're encumbered with logic, you're going to have a hard time understanding things. But the reality is that it probably will happen at some times, but I don't know when. And if there'll be the will or political will and the community will to do something that helps everybody regionally as compared to what helps or doesn't help my community specific. So we may have all, may have not all come here on the same ship, but we're on the same boat. And the problem is people only do, or communities only look at their interests on their own as compared to what's good regionally. And inadvertently they get impacted back by not doing what's good regionally. And so it's a common issue, but hopefully...
Well, as somebody who makes that commute, that specific commute, and again, it's not that it's hard, but it's certainly not a free-flowing traffic pattern between Moreno Valley and Redlands. But because why would I want to go the other way? Why would why would I want to go all the way around and jump on that 91 to the 10? So interesting. Okay, I mentioned earlier just before the interview, I didn't want to sandbag you, and again, for those of you that are like, does Iddo really know what he's talking about? Let me give you an example, and you can verify this yourself. So 4 years ago, you were doing your presentation, and we were talking logistics and delivery and how all the rest of the stuff is working. And as a matter of fact, if you actually watched the interview, you had mentioned a couple of stores, retail stores, and then you kind of pulled JCPenney's, and you could literally tell, you kind of just pulled it out. I think you almost paused and said, I'm just using them as an example. So I don't know that you specifically had some insight to JCPenney specifically, but your quote basically was, hey, if they want to get themselves kind of in balance with what they are able to deliver to the customer and what they currently have, they're going to need to cut their stores by about 30%. And as I'm this morning, I'm listening to your interview, trying to prepare for this, and I'm like, I recall a whole bunch of news, whether it was Sears or JCPenney's or Macy's or whatever it happened to be, which all kind of fall into the same category. So I did the quick Google search, saw several articles, one as recently as a month ago, USA Today, and it talked about the number of stores that JCPenney's had been cutting in the last couple of years. And again, the article, I believe, said they're planning on shuttering another 50 stores in 2022. And then it gave the number, and I did the quick math, and you were spot on. Matter of fact, I think they might actually be closing more than 30%. So I was like, wow, okay. Not that I ever doubted that you actually had given this some thought and figured it out.
The math was actually simpler than people think. It wasn't that I knew anything about JCPenney, but if you look at the total footprint and you look at what happened with department stores and other retail, you realize that they cannot support that kind of infrastructure with the sales per square foot. They were at $150, $165 a foot.
Right.
So I figured to get back to some equilibrium where they were back in 1990s, right? You're going back 20 more years. They'll have to reduce the footprint by about 40%, somewhere in there. I wouldn't have an exact number.
Right.
But essentially, it gravitated to that, right? So the math was actually a lot simpler to predict than any direct
and you may know this, I don't, but and aren't a lot of those large kind of box retailers, the Macy's, I mean, they all now have online stuff. I know Walmart does. Walmart appears to directly trying to be competing with Amazon.
Yeah, the biggest, I know it happens in history over and over again. The guys you think you should know are the ones who are asleep, right? For a variety of reasons. But think about Sears. Sears had a catalog for 200 years.
Yep.
Right? All they had to do is digitize the catalog, and they already had the business. They know how to take order. It was a mail catalog, right? Mail order. So they already had the catalog business, a thick book. I don't know if you remember the Sears catalog.
Yeah. When I was a kid,
and they already had distribution and everything else. So all they had to do is digitize that catalog, and they would have been on Amazon.
Right.
But they watch Amazon, everybody else do it. They never did it.
Right.
And eventually they, as we know what history, we've seen what happened to Sears. But
it seems like the entire world is, you know, even my industry, residential real estate, you know, we're concerned, you know, what is Zillow going to do? Are they completely digitizing the consumer experience? And again, our product is a little different because we are truly more of, even though we're selling a commodity in the form of a house, the service we sell isn't even so much the house. We're a service industry. You know, if you see value in Lance Martin or Coldwell Banker to help facilitate the purchase of that house, then there's a value attached to that, and then we get paid. If you don't see the value in that, then, you know, Open Door, I'm not sure how familiar you are what's going on the residential side, but there are a whole lot of Amazon-style industry folks out there looking at residential real estate and saying we don't need an agent. You know,
what happens is,
all
and it's a lot of industry, you have this transparency going on, which is, like you see in the car business, right?
Yep.
Here's the price. And so, you know, and a lot of, in fairness, in real estate today, you need the help of an agent.
Right.
It's a little complicated. There's negotiation going on. You're not sure exactly what to negotiate for, what you need to look for. So that consulting side of it, you know, advisory side of it is very important to consumer yet. But as things get more and more transparent in a lot of industries, right? It's like what happened with travel, right? You used to have travel agents, right?
Yep.
And they had to talk to them to figure out what the best price, how should I get there. Now you're going on Expedia and other type of platforms, and it gives you all the choices from every airline, right?
And it's completely changed that industry.
It changed the industry. So I think a lot of industries are going to gravitate to that platform, and real estate is no different.
Right.
It's you know,
but what you said about a minute ago about, you know, I'm paraphrasing, self-serving if I say it because it's my industry, about, hey, there is a value there is a need for professional consultation, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas maybe not to put more value on an agent necessarily than a travel agent, but okay, I'm willing to take a little bit of risk if I mess up on a 3-day weekend to Cabo and spend a couple $1,000s. You know, I may not want to take that same risk on writing an offer and everything that goes with it. On
absolutely not.
House.
Today, you know, obviously a home is, to most people, the most important investment they will make.
Yep.
And you want to get all the best advice you can, making that one big investment you have. Because if you're set up right and you bought it right, as years go on and you develop, you know, build equities and other things, and you want to play in a different home, revisit, you want the advice.
Yep.
I mean, that's still important. But, you know, being able to scope the market and see what's out there, I think all these digital platforms enables you to pre-sort a lot of things, but then you still want to go talk to the guy who can help you out, or girl, you know, the person who can advise you on how to best go about it.
Yeah, you know, it does. And we're going to come back to residential real estate because you had given me a little bit of a cue earlier before the interview that there may be something to talk about with residential real estate. But I got to tell you, whether we're providing value to the transaction or not, it's got to be a consumer experience. If we're not providing a good consumer experience for whatever the industry is or whatever the product is, there's going to be some disruption there. But you mentioned the Sears analogy, or you know, the folks that you would think would be smart enough to kind of know what's going on. And then you take a look at a company like Sears, for example, and say, how did they miss this? I mean, they had everything. I mean, all they had to do is digitize the catalog. I look at that from my personal business perspective all the time. So, okay, what am I missing? which is frankly why I love talking to people like you, and that's why I do this forecast, because I live in a constant state of panic that I may be making the wrong move, or I missed the move, but is it still, do I still have time to make that course correction and basically correct my business plan? So we'll come back to residential in a minute, but I want it, and I don't know if I haven't seen this as much in the news anymore, but I almost called you a few months ago and said, what's going on with the ports? Port of Long Beach, do we still have all those shipping containers sitting out there? Or have we broken that through a little bit? Because that's kind of in your wheelhouse, isn't it? What's happening there?
There were several things that happened all at once. COVID accelerated the demand for products. People were ordering, through e-commerce. But even prior to that, a lot of the big users of transportation services, like the Walmarts of the world and the Costcos, entered into deals with the big shipping lines. And part of the deal was, hey, we'll use you to move the stuff here, but we also need you to store our containers for a period until we can offload them to our distribution centers and stores. And what happened is there was so much coming in, and the deal was structured where some of the big shipping line had to store the containers at the facilities in the port, and they basically stocked up, and there was no more room.
No place to put it.
No place to put it. So it
wasn't so much getting them off of the trucks and the longshoremen doing that. It was they couldn't move the product fast enough.
A lot of things, trucks, congestion, availability of all of that, but also the fact that the port, the whole, the yards were full,
right,
and the big shipping lines will unload the ship and keep the product for the big customers there.
Right.
And there was no place to offload it.
Right.
And then you had the issue with containers not returning to the port. And I mean, there's a lot of issues that culminated in it. But it's getting better and will get better. And we got good management in the ports of LA and Long Beach, and those things will straighten out. But the big issue is that consumer demand, products still have to move. They're still becoming, we're a global economy.
Yep.
People don't realize it. I mean, there's not a single company anymore that masters all the resources and technology to make a product.
Right.
Even Apple, which is, the largest corporation in the world today, I don't know, I haven't checked them lately, they're probably $3 billion in market cap, but, they sell hundreds of millions of iPhones.
Yep.
But they really, procure components from about 776 global suppliers.
All over the place.
To make that iPhone.
Right.
So that interconnectivity is in the world in a big way and will continue. That's not going to change.
Right. Well, but that's part of the World Logistics Center. Isn't that kind of part of the concept? Let's try to bring as many of those suppliers into a more localized
area. Make it more efficient. It's all about,
right,
a consumer in the old days, right? You're young enough to remember where you waited for something in the mail.
Yep.
And it took a week or two to get it. And then there was overnight, right? Federal Express.
Right.
And then now people want next day delivery,
right,
same day delivery.
Right now.
And to process that type of volume that quickly, that accurately,
yep,
and provide a customer experience where it's delivered on time and you can rely on it.
We want it now.
It takes a lot of technology and a lot of infrastructure.
You had mentioned Apple. I'm a total Apple junkie, and I just purchased online, of course, 3 new MacBook Airs for some call center, some staff I had. And I went online, and it's funny. We mentioned Apple 4 years ago, and I still, to this day, I just find it amazing that they have stores here and there, and it seems like they should have one on every corner, but no, they got it figured out. Why would you do that on every corner? But at any rate, I did the online order, and I was driving by the Victoria Garden store. So I figured, what the heck? I've got to go by there anyway. I'll just pick it up. So I went and did that. And then I went to drive over there. I said, well, I'm not getting my notification. Nora, it sends me the thing, you're ready to pick up. And I got a notification. It says, oh, it'll be ready next week. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to wait? I have to wait 6-7 days to get this? And I immediately thought the world was out of balance and there was a problem. At any rate, then I got another notification a few hours later that said, oh no, you can pick it up. And so instead of having to wait 3 hours, I had to wait 6 hours. But for a minute, I thought I had to wait a week, and I was just like, oh my God, the world is ending. But anyway, the expectation of the consumer. I mean, heck, I ordered socks yesterday. I'm finding myself, and again, I've become an Amazon junkie. I mean, I truly have become an Amazon junkie. I shop more now than my wife's like, what are you doing? There's another package. I said, well, this is the deal. I needed a pair of socks. And I just put her the thing, and it takes 60 seconds, and the next day, every day I got packages showing up. I don't even know what I'm ordering. So, okay, so the logjam at the ports. So we feel that's behind us, because I haven't noticed that on the news lately, and
It's much better, and it will get better, and it will stabilize. A lot of the issue is once you get the stuff, we have about 2 billion square feet of industrial space in Southern California, with literally zero vacancy.
Zero.
Right. So you bring more things, right? Where do you put them? You can't offload them.
So what's the shortage of square footage or cubic feet that we're missing? What do we need that we don't have?
Over the last 10, 15 years, we've built about, in the Inland Empire, let's say 20 million square feet, 20 to 25 million square feet a year that gets absorbed every year. This is new stuff. But it will continue, like I said, nationally. We probably need about, in the next 5 years, about 800 million square feet of space.
Okay.
And there's several things happening. To manage inventories, to manage goods movement and what's happening in the world and shipping and everything else, it requires companies to have safety stock. So they actually want to keep more inventory on shore. That requires more space.
Right.
And if you look at the aggregate, the entire United States, that's hundreds of millions of square feet.
So the cubic feet or square feet that you plan on developing in the next 5 to 7 years, you're confident that that's just, you build it and you're going to have an occupancy?
The demand has been way ahead of supply.
Right.
People have to wait. There's zero vacancy. If you want to go out and get a building today, you'll have a hard time getting one. The demand will probably continue at 20, 25 million square feet a year.
Right.
So as large as we are, we're about 2 years supply. But what's really happening in the market is that we're running out of land.
Right.
So if you look at every single piece of industrial land in the region, I don't care if it's 5 acres, 10 acres, 50 acres, and you aggregate it all, there's probably 50 to 60 million square feet of industrial land somewhere.
But that's in the
not in one spot.
But that's in the right location.
In the Inland Empire.
Right, because you've got your golden triangle thing that you're referring to. And when you start getting farther out of that triangle, then transportation still
is a big factor, because transportation is the single largest component of the cost of logistics. So transportation is a big thing. But if you look at just the market itself, you have maybe 50 to 60 million square feet of potential space you could build, and then you completely run out. Right. Well, so if you apply that against 20, 25 million a year of demand, you got basically 2 years supply, and after that there'll basically be no space.
Right.
And will probably be the majority of the space that's left.
Right.
So we'll probably at those years accelerate and produce a lot more than, we'll basically be responsive to the market.
Right.
And that's why buildings are getting higher.
Right.
Because you can't, you
got to go up.
The last years, 20, 30 years, you can always drive 100 feet further, buy 100 acres, put up a building. But that's it.
Running out
of land, there's no more.
Either that or you're going to have your golden triangle is going to have to get bigger. And that probably doesn't work, because then you've got the transportation costs, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we're all the way down to the Mexican border on the south, and we're hitting the up desert, in LA, and the Inland Empire. We're out all the way to the Badlands already and beyond. So there's open space in Southern California that you see is open is either under conservation, it's dedicated open space, has other environmental issues. The low-hanging fruit has been picked a long time ago. There's no big pieces. Even the World Logistics Center is probably made out of 100+ pieces. It's not one big piece of land.
About the parcels? Yeah, you were
assembling.
Going
it was like a checkerboard, and you had to put all things together.
Yeah.
So
when you started that acquisition, in like 04-ish?
Yeah, 04, yeah.
And just kind of, because that's kind of where I think you caught my attention. Although I wasn't a land guy, and certainly not an industrial guy. I was always residential, but you know people that are in the area, and like, oh wow, Iddo Benzeevi's purchased some properties out on the East End, and okay. But it was so far away from my world, I don't know that anybody in my world on the residential side paid attention to it. So there's a great segue. So the residential. So you gave me a little. I've been asking you for a very long time. At what point do you start to develop your residential projects? It sounds like maybe there's some stuff coming. So what are you doing on the residential side?
So one site you may know in the Rancho Belago area, what we used to call Aquabella. It's all that empty,
On Nason.
open land. Nason, Iris,
Yep.
you know, Cactus, all that area in
Yep.
front of the Kaiser Hospital on one
Very,
end. And
very familiar with it.
and so that's sort of like the downtown. And the city...
Isn't Lewis Homes putting aren't they putting like a little town center or something in
They
there?
have a parcel there that they call the town center, but the town center area is much larger than the Lewis project.
Right.
It's called town center, but it isn't the entire town center.
Right.
So we pretty much have the majority of it, which is the Aquabella, 700 acres that's sitting there, the infill site.
Yep.
And we're right now looking to retool it in terms of, you know, meeting market demand, and especially with the World Logistics Center, the hospital's expansions. You know, Kaiser approved a 1 million square foot expansion.
Yep.
The University Hospital has got plans as well.
Yep.
So when you look at all those jobs coming, all the demand for housing, you'll need a lot of housing, a lot of apartments. So we're looking at creating this downtown center for, you know, for the whole community, the whole city. And it'll be several thousand units. I don't know if it'll be anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 units.
Right.
And a variety of product types and a lot of
So it basically, you said infill, and so it would basically fill that space basically between the university and Kaiser, basically, you know, kind of that medical area.
LaSalle is the western boundary.
Out to LaSalle, okay. And then, of course, all those people that are buying those houses are going to they're going to walk to work or maybe ride their bike.
That's the whole
right?
idea. You know, the whole idea now, even the state, you know, sort of the overall arching idea is we're not building any more roads.
Right.
The only way we do, by the way, I said that like 15 years ago in a meeting. I was looking for the tape. It was in a county. They were talking about expanding the 91. And I was actually jokingly, but against it in the sense that what we're doing in the Inland Empire, right? We're subsidizing, the taxpayers paying for all the infrastructure, building the freeways,
right,
taxing ourselves so people can go from Riverside County to the coastal county, Orange County, LA, and so forth. I said, what we should do, instead of spending billions of dollars of expanding more road capacity, is actually spend the money to narrow the 91 freeway.
Right.
So nobody can get to Orange County. And if you can't get the labor into Orange County, maybe the Orange County folk will say, okay, let's build the industry
let's build
and
it
the
out
business
here.
out in the Inland Empire where people live and where they work. So it was half a joke, but in reality, instead of spending billions of dollars of expanding capacity, which never seems to be enough, spend those billions of dollars subsidizing infrastructure to make it very profitable and convenient for companies from the coastal counties to relocate in the Inland Empire where most of the people working in those companies live.
Yep.
So anyways, as you saw, we expanded the 91 and there's still traffic.
Of course.
Because the thing is, the only time you'll ever reduce traffic is by bringing jobs to where people live.
Right.
If you build more homes in the Inland Empire, more jobs in the coastal counties, the more homes you build here, the more jobs over there, the more freeway you need to add. The more capacity.
And you've been in Moreno Valley for a very long time. I live in Riverside now, but I have had an office in Moreno Valley now for 34 years. Hard to believe we've been doing this that long. And
we were young when we started.
Yes. And my wife said I got to make a Botox appointment apparently. And Adam, still you got the lights up too high over here, Adam. But yeah, it's been a long time. But that conversation I can remember 30 years ago about, let's bring the jobs to Moreno Valley, and for whatever reason, politically or just the will to get it done, just didn't seem to be there. But so getting back to your residential project, so not just you. In fact, I was at a meeting just a week ago, and Randall Lewis was there, and I kind of gave him the softball question. I said, well, goodness gracious, if you had known that real estate values we're going to go up 40%, residential real estate. And by the way, let's specifically talk Moreno Valley, but you could insert Rancho Cucamonga, or frankly, pretty much anywhere in the Southern California area, or for that matter, most of the country. 20% appreciation in 2020, 20% appreciation in 2021. So now it appears as though values have risen to a point where maybe some of that offset risk that's involved as a developer, because there's a lot of risk doing stuff like that. Interest rates, inflation. But heck, with my question to Randall, I guess, is the question I'll kind of tee up to you, but you've already answered it. It says, okay, if you had known, had the crystal ball, that residential real estate was going to go up 40% in the Inland Empire, would you have built every single lot that you had a permit to build? And his answer was interesting, because I didn't realize this. Lewis Homes is a family with a whole bunch of people. They don't all, just like most families, they don't all agree on the exact same thing. He said, well, some of us would have built everything, and others would have said, no, we want to, you know, have something to build 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But so it sounds like anyway, at least in part, this appreciation we've seen over the last couple of years has made you pause and say, hey, we've got some residential buildable lots. So when can we expect to see some of those hit the market? Because you know, you probably know better than I do, we have a little bit of a supply problem. There is nothing, and I'm not overstating it, when someone says there's a 30-day supply of homes in the city of Moreno Valley, for example, that is not accurate. No, the numbers, when you do the math, is, well, yeah, okay, it's a 30-day supply. The reality is there is a 0-day supply of homes available, and that's in most communities, because that stuff is hitting the market, and there's still 5, 10, 30 buyers, even with higher interest rates. So we've seen a little bit of interest rates. So, and the only reason it shows that it's on the market for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks is it's just taking the agents that long to go through the offers. I mean, there literally is a 0-day inventory. So when can we expect to see some of these homes? Because I honestly, you know, I think it's going to go. I think your project and most projects will look like Moreno Valley 1985, 1986, where you put up your construction trailer, you don't even have the models built yet, and you're going to have a line of more people that want to buy homes than you're able to deliver. That's what I believe. I truly believe that. So let me shut up and let you fill in some blanks there. So what can we expect?
Well, we're hoping that next year we'll start. We've already started construction. You know, before the recession, we mass graded about half the site, put in the backbone infrastructure, and you know, so we stopped because.
But when you say before the recession, you're talking like 2005, or a long time
6, 7.
Okay,
right, and
got it.
Those years.
Okay.
So we started it, and then obviously the recession came, and we said, okay, it's not the time to build out the project.
Right.
And we stopped. We got busy with all of other things. Now we think next year we'll probably start going, right, and start construction on the project. Maybe even start towards the end of this year, if we can. You know, everything takes time with permits and planning and all the stuff that goes on with it. But you're right, the demand is there. So you want to build to the demand, and so we're actually actively engaged in, we call it retooling, you know, basically replanning the project. And, you know, the world has changed, even in retail, right? People don't really have a need anymore to go to the warehouse, or what we used to call the retail store. And, you know, if they go and buy anything, they want to buy an experience. So the malls that have an experiential value to them, because you like to walk around, you like to enjoy it, they do well. The malls, the traditional malls, the anchored by the big department stores that had not that much going, are the ones that are struggling, or some of them are failing. So people are interested in buying an experience. The same thing with housing. It's no longer just buy a house in your backyard. It's you want to live in a community with this sort of amenities and experience. And so we're working very hard on providing an unbelievable experience. Not anything that's been seen before, because we think it's all about that. And we're taking some of our hospitality experience and bringing it, because, you know, people talk about communities.
So it's truly a master plan community.
And resort living,
but
resort living and communities, you know, basically meant there's some central amenity, a clubhouse. And that was the, we're talking about a true resort feel.
Really?
The experience you have it, and bring that into basically living, your living environment. So it's interesting, it's exciting to be part of that planning, and we're hoping to, you know, certainly be vertical in 2024 if we can get through all the permits. The city, between the World Logistics Center and these massive residential projects we have, you know, we'll be working with them to try to make it more efficient, because that's a lot of stuff coming very quickly. So
yeah, but it's needed. I mean, on every level. I mean, it's needed. I mean, sticking into my wheelhouse, I mean, you know, one of the reasons we've seen, and I don't think it would have changed, quite honestly, this huge appreciation. Granted, it was interest rate driven, and maybe the value of home has been a little more accentuated in the last several years with people staying home and they don't have to go to work, and now they're working, hey, I want to have a little nicer house, I want to maybe have the swimming pool that I didn't have before. But, even if those units had come to market, you know, the more supply, in theory, tamper down the demand, maybe prices wouldn't have gone up as much. I don't believe that's the case. I think there was so much demand. So do you have any concerns? You know, we've seen interest rates kind of go up a little bit, but goodness gracious, you know, they're still sub 4%. I mean, goodness, you know, if we cannot educate a consumer that a 4% interest rate is basically still pretty much free money, and even a 4.5% interest rate, or even a 5% interest rate for that matter. You know, a few years back when we were north of 5, I would stand up at sales meetings, and if I had somebody complain about interest rates, I'd be like, "Are you kidding me? If we can't sell the value of homeownership at a 5% interest rate, then you need to get a different profession, because that's cheap money." And frankly, what we've seen the last few years has been almost free. But are there any concerns in the next couple of years that, you know, inflation? I mean, geez, we got Russia, we got Ukraine. I mean, hopefully that resolves itself. So what are you keeping an eye on?
Yeah. Well, it's all concerning. Interest rates have impact on the economy. Like you said, if somebody buys a house, it may not have a huge difference, but to some people it is, because, you know, they maximize what they can, you know, put out towards a mortgage. But yeah, there's always adjustments. You live long enough to see those cycles come and go, and it certainly will happen at some point here. I can't project exactly the day or the time that something happened, but
right.
Certainly there's movements right now that they indicate a little bit more caution. You know, there's stuff in Europe that's going on. You don't know how that perpetuate. Will China decide to make a move with Taiwan and
right.
all that? But at the end of the day, I think there's some pretty rational people sitting there.
Yeah.
And those dislocations will adjust themselves and work itself out. But I think the next 5 to 10 years will be pretty decent years. In our world, especially in logistics, there's
right.
still, I mean, as much as we're buying on e-commerce, it's still only about 20% of retail.
Right.
So there's still a lot of expansion possible. So in this space, it will continue. I don't think people are going to stop buying things
right.
online, right? So that's not
right.
stopping. That's
so yeah. So whatever concerns I may have, I don't know that I ever connect my concerns to the logistic world and the online retail world, because I don't know anybody who's. I mean, we're not going back. I mean, we're not going back to the mall, right?
No. Well, for experiences, yes. So people, we're still humans. We're social animals. You want to be together, right? We feel better when we're together. And so people will still want to go to places where they can be together.
Right.
And so you see...
But is that the mall, or is that like a restaurant and a concert?
Well, not just a restaurant, but what I call it, malls that have experiential value to them. Like people like Victoria Gardens, or they like, you know, the Grove in Los Angeles, because they like to walk around there. It's not as much as going shopping because you need something that you can order online. It's going shopping because you're interested in seeing new things. Like you mentioned Apple. They got it all earlier and sooner than most people.
Right.
I think, and somebody could check it, I think 80% of the sales are online.
Right.
The stores are almost little showrooms. Yeah. Come, touch, and feel our product, see what it is, and then go home and order.
But it has to be that experience, though. I'm going to compare Big Five to Bass Pro Shops, and I know we have a Big Five, you know, big warehouse, you know, Marina Valley, Riverside area, and frankly, there's a Big Five Sporting Goods in the same center that my Marina Valley office is in. But I got to tell you, the experience going to Big Five is different than the experience going to Bass Pro Shops over at Victoria Gardens. That's like going to Disneyland, and so I think that's. I guess I do agree with you. You know, I don't. If I need something that I could buy easily online, I don't know that I would go to Big Five to do it. But if I want to walk around for a little bit and check out all the stuffed animals and the cool stuff and the boats and the demonstrations they've got going at Bass Pro Shops, I guess I do that.
Yeah. Unless, you know, it's a question that I asked a long time ago in a conference. That people don't know not always understand what business they're in.
Right.
So I used the example I remember back in the days. I said, if you were a drill manufacturer and I met you in some conference and they say, hey, Lance, you know, what do you do? I said, well, a drill manufacturer. And I said, well, what business are you in? You say, I'm a drill manufacturer. And if you ask the average person in that industry, say, we're in the manufacturing business, we're in the drill business, we're in the tooling business, we manufacture tools, we manufacture drills. And so that's the answers I will get. And I remember being on the stage over there, and I said, well, Yes, but I'm asking what business are you in, not what you do. Right. What business are you in? And I still get manufacturing business and tooling business and so forth. So finally, somebody in the audience, some CEO of some company says, well, okay, you tell us, if you were a drill manufacturer, what business would you say you're in?
Right.
So I said, if I was a drill manufacturer, I say I'm in the whole business. Because what you need is a hole. If tomorrow I can get you the same hole in the concrete with something that looks like an aspirin tablet, right, you'll buy the little pill, get a hole. Because what you need is a hole. Right. So you're using my drills to get a hole. You don't need my drill. You need a hole. Right. So if I get you a tablet. So it's the same thing with retail. People didn't understand there's two components to retail. One level is basic needs. You need it, right? You need water. You need to buy water and you need to drink water. But a lot of what you buy, honestly, is you don't really need. Right. You want the experience. It makes you feel good. People like shopping. So what you're really selling is an experience, especially today where you can order almost anything you want online. Right. And people talk about, in a different conference, I was asked about clothing. Hey, people still want to try them on, and that business is not going to go away. I said, no, don't underestimate technology. Right. Because what's coming is, and I've already seen it, is you walk in, there's a scanner, a 3D scanner. You put on like a bodysuit. Yep. It's sort of like your bodysuit. You go for surfing. Something that's tied to your body, but it's a lot thinner. You stand like at the airport. That thing 3D scans you and creates a digital mannequin of you. Yep. But it doesn't stop there because of digital technology and modeling technology. Every crease, every contour of your body, they can lay any clothes. You could pick any shirt, any pants, anything you want, and it will actually show you and how that cloth actually lays on you. And because it's a digital mannequin, we know exactly your size. You don't have to guess what your size is. Yep. And the same thing with shoes. I haven't seen those scanners. You put your leg in. Right. You're no longer a size 7 or 7.5 or 9 or 10 or 10.5.
You're size Iddo.
You're exactly size Lance.
Right.
And with additive manufacturing, over time, that actually literally print your shoe. Right? Yeah. Additive manufacturing. So what's happening with technology is going to make your ability to basically try on different things. I mean, they already do it with glasses. There's right. You can go on the internet.
The Warby,
right?
Yeah.
You can check different glasses, and your face is there, and it shows you what you would look like with that glass. That technology is evolving faster and better to where you model clothes, you model shoes.
But the technology is the sales experience or the customer experience. And to your analogy, you're not in the drill business, you're in the whole business is self-serving. I'm a sales guy. I'd say, we're all in the sales business. We are all in the sales business, and hopefully it's not sales in the negative connotation that some people, because that's not sales, that's bad. But it's providing a customer experience through whatever knowledge that you bring. I mean, look at you. I mean, you look at everything that you had to do to get to where you are, to do the construction and the development you've done. Hey, I've seen you in action. A lot of what you do is sales. Okay, but in the most positive way. This is my vision. This is my dream. Let me share that with the decision makers, the public, the community, and do it in a way that brings people on board, brings it to a positive experience. Which is why I'm interested. We're going to wrap up here in a little bit, but I want to make sure I understand you on the residential project, because it sounds like you're just not building houses. It sounds like what? And it doesn't sound like you're building houses with a little clubhouse and a tennis court. It sounds like you're building an experience, which is going to be a little bit different. At least maybe that's what I heard. So what do we? And I think you even said the word resort in there somewhere. What is the vision for what you're building over there?
What I mean by the resort is when you go to a resort, there's a certain feeling you get by being in a resort. You don't quite get that in a residential community, as much as they call it resort. So we're not looking to build a resort per se, but it's the ambience and the feel. It's like downtown where you have the access to certain amenities that you want to be, sort of combining the best of the best of retail, the best of parks, the best of just how you live, how you move around the place, what you see, how things articulate. So the whole experience of living in a place. Like you say, why is some neighborhoods or some areas of town people like to go spend time in? Right. As compared to other places where, right? You drive through it. Right. So we spend billions of dollars of planning in America and create nowhereness, right? A lot of them are, all of the plans look like a beautiful bubble diagram on a wall. Yep. Or great from a windshield of a car. You drive around. But a lot of them, the sense of community is really not there per se, right? It's just big, vast areas you drive around to your tract home. So bringing the actual experience in, the kind of experience that you have between going, like you said, from your Oham mall to the experience you get being in Victoria Garden or things that have more of experience to them. So that's the same equivalent to residential. What makes you feel like you enjoy living there by getting out of the house? You talk about humanity. You want to see people, not, talk about master plan communities. You have literally communities where people live across the street from each other for 20 years. Don't know each other. Right? But they call it community, right?
Yep.
They may wave Christmas with, right? We know that. So
things have changed.
Bringing that experience that really made people feel good, be able to congregate in places, be able to see, I call it humanity, people. So we're working on creating a unique place. There will be
well, I hope you succeed, and something tells me you will. So, all right, so let's get this wrapped up. So if you're on the residential side of my audience, an agent or frankly a buyer, we've got some good news because finally, after all these years we've been talking about it, sounds like we're going to see some new homes coming out of. Is that branded as part of Highland Fairview? Or is that a totally different partnership?
No, Highland Fairview is our company.
Right.
So Highland Fairview is basically the entity that.
So what are we calling this? Do we have a name for this community yet?
The project itself, we're going to have a name for it.
Okay. To be determined.
It's not named yet. It's not named yet. Not branded yet. The other one is branded or named World Logistics Center.
Yep.
Some people call it WLC.
Yep.
So that's there. But Highland Fairview is the developer of this
Understood.
project.
Okay, so we've got some residential stuff coming. I know I'm excited. I can't wait. Honest to God, I cannot wait. And then quite honestly, for our industrial commercial guys, again, there's so much stuff going on out there. But honestly, I'm happy for you because I've been following, the World Logistics Center for so long, and I know some of the struggles that you've been through and the successes that you've had. And I truly hope your 5 to 7 year build on that. I'd just love to see it happen. I think it's good for the community. It's good for the community, not only the Moreno Valley community, but the Golden Triangle and all the rest of that. So anyway, I'm excited on a lot of ways. So thank you so much, Iddo. I appreciate you coming.
Pleasure being with you.
Once again, so we'll get you back next year. We'll do this live. Maybe we'll get to the Fox Theater or something. We can actually get in front of 500 or 600 people. But at any rate, so here we are. So keep an eye out we still have about 7 or 8 additional speakers coming on our 2022 Market Forecast series. We're going to do the end cap, if you will, with Chris Thornburg on April 6th. So more information on how you're going to be able to see Chris. We might actually bring Chris to you live in person somewhere, but for now, just save the date, April 6th, and we'll figure out how we're going to do that. But once again, Iddo, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and thank you for your time, and we will see you shortly.